This is the PlayStation Portal, and we're gonna have a look at it today in another super cool unboxing. Welcome to Mike Techs It Out. I'm Mike, and I'm here with the PlayStation Portal and also the elephant in the room. So if you followed my channel for some time, I used to do midweek videos, and one of my more popular midweek videos was about why I'm selling my PS5. So obviously, if I sold my PS5, and you know that, then why do I have a PlayStation Portal? Well, it's quite simple. I bought another PS5 recently. It was around November when Spider-Man 2 came out. I will probably do another video on why I bought a PS5. There's actually several reasons, but for now, I got a PS5 recently. The Portal came out, which is extremely hard to find for some reason. But I got my hands on one yesterday, which is December 20th, when I'm recording this video. I'm recording on the 21st. And I found it at a GameStop. So I just did the thing where I checked my local area. They had one that was like 10 miles away. I bought it online and I went to pick it up. So no scalper pricing, just wait for this thing to come in stock. It's not really worth paying extra money for. It's a streaming only device. It's like 200 bucks. It's made to be cheap. Or cheaper. It's not super cheap, but it's not really made for you to pay like $300 or $400 for. So if you can't find one, just wait till it comes back in stock. So while I open this, I'll talk a little bit about the device. If you're not familiar with the Portal, this is a streaming only device. It's made for remote play with a PS5. So you basically have to have a PS5 in order to even be able to use this thing. And it basically lets you stream your games locally, or if you can connect to a Wi-Fi network outside of your house, you can also stream your games from your PS5 to outside of the home as well. But that's literally all it does. There's no like streaming services as far as videos. You can't even play cloud streaming games from Sony's library on this thing. It's literally either disc-based or digital games, and that's it. No cloud games. Very basic as far as the functionality. So let's go ahead and get this side box open. There's a piece of paper here, and then that just slides out of there. This is a very dense inner box. I guess they wanted to retain its shape. We got the PlayStation logo here and the little pull tab. First, we got to open this little mini box. What's in this little box? It's probably the charger. I mean, what else will be in here? It's a USB-C to C cable. Does this come with a power brick? I didn't even think to check. I mean, it's not a big deal for me if it doesn't, but interesting if it doesn't come with the power brick. And yeah, it doesn't come with the power brick. So if you buy this and you don't have a USB-C power brick, you might want to get one, or you could charge this by plugging it into the PS5, obviously. But if you don't want to do that, then you have to get a power brick if you don't already have one. How big is this cable anyway? This is a decent length. This is probably about maybe like 3.5 feet or 3 feet or something like that. I'll put the actual measurements on the screen because I'm not going to get that right. Let's get this out of the package to see what we're working with here. So let's go over the controls really quick. So we got our thumbsticks here, triangle, circle, square, and cross. It's X. I'm sorry. It's X. Then we got our D-pad, which feels good. Got our start and share button. And then up top, we got our power button. You also have the link button, which uses Sony's new wireless audio standard. The Portal doesn't support Bluetooth, so if you want wireless headphones, you gotta go with the Pulse earbuds, which are really expensive and sold out just like the Portal is. There may be workarounds to use Bluetooth headphones, but I haven't looked into it yet. Besides that, on the top, you have your volume buttons, and then you also have your 2 top firing speakers. Hidden in the back under the lip is the USB-C port for charging and the headphone jack, your only other option for audio out of the box. Now around the front, you have your 8-inch 1080p 60Hz screen. It does feel heavier than I expected, but this is kind of a full PS5 controller plus a tablet in the middle. But I would have thought this would have been a little bit lighter than it is. This is actually pretty dense. Let me get this little screen peel thing off. All right, so this is how it looks, the PlayStation Portal. And if you think it looks weird online, it still looks weird in person. The weird thing for me is the indent into the screen is like, it just is like a full controller bolted on this thing. Before we dive into this, I gotta do a few comparisons first to see how it feels. All right, so I went and got a few friends. We have the Switch, we have the OG Steam Deck, we have the ROG Ally, and then I also got a PS5 controller because, you know, you gotta have your point of comparison for the controller. So this controller is actually pretty hefty when I hold it by itself. And then of course, you got your thumbsticks at the bottom. The thumbsticks on the actual PS5 controller are a little bit bigger. They look roughly the same height though. They feel right. The one thing that felt weird about the Ally, which does have these bigger thumbsticks, they almost have console-sized thumbsticks, is they felt really loose to me when I first tried them. I've gotten used to them now, but I was like, oh, this feels weird. Like they felt kind of too big for a handheld. These sticks do feel right. They don't feel, in my mind, any different than using a regular PS5 controller. So I'll apply them for that. The trigger travel is the same on these, which is really good. I guess the weight makes sense because like this controller isn't exactly the lightest. It's fine, but like if you think about this controller with the big tablet in the middle, the weight starts to make sense. As far as comfort, I mean, it's like PS5 controller. If you find a PS5 controller comfortable, you'll probably find this comfortable. Because it has this open grip, it does make it a lot easier just to grab onto. Now, as compared to something like this, where it doesn't have the open grip, but it's still comfortable because you could just rest your fingers here. This, if you like to rest your fingers on the back of the system, you're kind of stretching them across a gap. I mean, this is better if you really want to grab in there. The way I will probably play this would be like open hands, just resting my hands on it. And I do think that something like this is a little bit more comfortable. Let me see the Steam Deck, because this has a good grip to it too. Yeah, even this, I don't know. I find it a little bit more comfortable. Maybe it's because I'm used to it. And then of course here's the OG Switch, which I don't think is amazing, but it's light. Like, this thing feels pretty heavy in comparison to the Switch. So far, my first impression, the buttons feel really good. I mean, they feel just like a PlayStation controller. Like, if you want something that's like handheld, that's PlayStation controller quality, I mean, this is pretty much it. The ergonomics, I'm gonna have to test out further and kind of give you my impressions of those, but so far, it's not my favorite. It's not horrible, like it's usable, but it doesn't feel the most comfortable out of the box. But with that out of the way, literally, I want to go ahead and get this thing set up and let's see what the out-of-box experience is for this. All right, we're back and it's the next day. I'm back with the PlayStation Portal. I've played it for a few hours. I'm going to give you my thoughts on my short time with it so far. So out of the box, there were a lot of updates just in 1 year. There were like 5 or 6 different updates and it took like 30 minutes. I think it had to restart twice. I was originally going to record my gameplay when I recorded the first part of this video, but the updates took so long, I gave up. I kind of wanted to do like a first impressions out of the box gameplay, but it wasn't going to happen with those updates. So after the updates, you have to sign into your account. I just use the QR code and sign in with my phone. You can also sign in manually, but the QR code actually works super well. It's pretty fast. If you have remote play enabled on your console, then it'll just find your console and connect. Now, most of the time, it wakes the console and connects pretty fast, but sometimes it takes like 30 seconds to a minute to connect. Other times, it'll just get stuck, and then I'll have to cancel the connection and then reconnect, and then it'll usually connect instantly. But typically, I would say on the average, it takes about 10 seconds to connect. The small connection issues I've run into, they're not a huge deal, but they are something to note. Now, one thing I like that they added that they first bring your attention to when you sign in is there's a slide out menu that they added for settings. And when you end your session, it'll also put the console in the sleep mode. It really makes it feel more like a console experience. Now, of course, this isn't really a console, it's a network device, and your network setup is important since you're streaming locally from the console. So for my setup, I have the PS5 hardwire. It's connected to my network switch, which is connected to my mesh router. I have 3 access points around the house for my router, so I have a pretty consistent wireless connection throughout, and then plus with the PS5 being hardwired, this is probably the best case scenario to use the PlayStation Portal. Now, I plan on testing it in other network conditions in a future video, but for now, let's talk about the performance. So I've exclusively been playing Spider-Man 2 on this, and I've also recently been using remote play on my iPad and a cheap Android tablet, and this pretty much performs the same as far as the streaming quality. The one advantage I'll give this is it can be a bit sharper than those devices just because the streaming isn't limited to 720p like it is when you use a remote play app on other devices. But since this is a Wi-Fi device, the connection will inevitably drop or dip, and it handles it pretty well, but you do see some artifacts from time to time when playing. Now, it is a bit more noticeable on the Portal just because the resolution is higher, so you can tell when there's a loss in clarity, but it really isn't that bad. I probably played this thing for about 3 hours so far, and I only had one hard drop where it gave me the warning that my connection was lost, and it only happened one time, and it reconnected in about a second. So it's basically the same as any other device I've used as far as remote play. Now, the one thing you're probably wondering about is latency. So since this controller is connected to the device, the latency is really low. I didn't really notice any input lag when playing the Portal. It feels the same as playing on the console. But that's also been my experience when using remote play on other devices. The only time I really feel latency on my other devices is when the controller is connected via Bluetooth. but that's obviously not an issue with the Portal since the controllers are built in. The one thing that is nice about the controller is you get the full capabilities of the PS5 controllers, specifically the vibration and the haptic triggers. There is a way to get vibration working using a third-party app on Android, but even when using the PS5 controller plugged directly into the tablet, the vibration wasn't that strong. It was kind of weird, it felt a little off. So this is definitely the best experience if you want the full controller features while doing remote play. And speaking of the controller, I thought the device felt kind of heavy when I was unboxing it earlier, but it actually felt good when playing it. My hands didn't get fatigued, and I think it was because I was holding those other devices earlier that were lighter, like the Switch, and it felt heavier in comparison. But like, I handed it to my husband to try it, and he said it felt pretty light overall. So yeah, it feels pretty good to hold. I still prefer something like the ROG Ally or the Steam Deck just because it doesn't have this gap, but the Portal isn't bad. Now, there are a few things that you're not getting with this device. Like I mentioned in the first part of the video, you can't do anything with it besides remote play, and since this is a streaming device, it would be nice if you could stream video or play PlayStation cloud-based games. That would be like a great inclusion. It doesn't bother me that much personally because I bought this for remote play and I don't really play any of the cloud-based games from Sony, but it would be nice to have that functionality. There are a couple of things that bother me with the Portal though. The one thing is small, but the virtual touch pads are not great. They pop up when you tap the screen, and I do like that they put one on each side of the screen, but they're not super responsive, which I guess isn't that different from the actual touchpad on the controllers. But the annoying part is when you do what would be like a single press, normally you kind of have to double tap it. I feel like it was intentional to avoid accidental presses, but I already have to tap the screen for the touchpad to show up. So I feel like double pressing it again is just unnecessary. The one thing that's surprisingly bad about the Portal is the audio. It sounds really tinny from those top firing speakers. It sounds like audio from a cheap Android tablet, which I know because I recently bought a cheap Android tablet that I was using for remote play before I had this. And I guess it's a good way for them to sell those earbuds. It does have the headphone jack though, so you could at least plug some headphones in there. I would recommend if you're playing something that's story heavy where you really need to hear the audio to use some headphones. Now here's a quick comparison of the audio from the Portal versus the ROG Ally streaming Spider-Man remastered from the PC.
Careful where you point that thing! Hope the ceremony for Officer Davis hasn't started yet.
Now I know that the Ally is a way more expensive device, but the Switch Lite is the same price and the audio is way better and it runs games natively. So I feel like even at this price point, they could have done better with the audio. Overall, my first impressions after my short time with it is I think Sony delivered on what's been promised. I wouldn't say from a streaming standpoint that it's drastically better than any other device that you can run remote play on. It's really just the combination of the controls and the screen that make it a good device. Now I acknowledge the $200 isn't cheap, but I tried to build my own remote play setup, which I'm going to do a comparison video on with this soon. But I used a cheaper Android tablet and one of the controller holders, and then factoring in the price of the PS5 controller itself, I only saved about 15 bucks, so the pricing kind of makes sense if you factor in the tablet and all that stuff. So overall, my first impressions of this device, I like the controller and the screen. The touchpad situation isn't great, but it's not that big of a deal, and the audio could definitely be better. It makes that proprietary wireless earbud solution feel kind of worse. I overall still like the device and I probably get a lot of use out of it, but let me know in the comments how you feel about the PlayStation Portal. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification to be notified when I drop a video or a live stream. And always do at least 2 things at the same time.